The merchant vessel Eternal Dawn drifted through the darkness of space like a dying animal. Its engines were dead. Its lights flickered on and off. Inside the ship, 12 crew members tried not to panic as their air slowly ran out. Captain Hyun-woo stood on the bridge and stared at the empty screens. He was a Talveen, a species that looked like tall, thin creatures with blue skin and large eyes. His people were peaceful traders who traveled the galaxy selling crops and medicines. They had no weapons. They had no soldiers. They only had hope, and right now that hope was fading fast. "How much time do we have?" Hyun-woo asked his engineer. Dae-hyun was young for a Talveen, barely 30 cycles old. He looked at his captain with fear in his eyes. 40 hours, maybe less. The life support system is failing. I tried to fix it, but the damage is too bad. 40 hours, less than 2 days before they would all suffocate in the cold darkness of space. Hyun-woo felt his heart sink. They were in the worst possible place for this to happen. This sector of space was dangerous. 3 different empires fought over it constantly, and none of them were kind to ships in distress. The Kratheen Dominion would take them as slaves. The Vorash Collective would steal their ship and leave them to die. The Ishkari Empire might ask for ransom, but probably not for a simple merchant crew with no money. "Send out the distress signal," Hyun-woo said quietly. "Send it on all frequencies. Maybe someone will hear us." Dae-hyun nodded and activated the emergency beacon. The signal went out into space, a small cry for help in an enormous and uncaring galaxy. The message was simple. "This is the merchant vessel Eternal Dawn. We have critical engine failure. Life support failing. 12 crew members. Please help." Hours passed. The crew gathered in the common room. They were scared but trying to be brave. Ji-won, their navigator, led them in a traditional Talveen ceremony for the dying. They sang old songs about returning to the soil of their homeworld. They held hands and tried to comfort each other. Boram, the medical officer, gave out the last of their sedatives. "If no one comes," she said gently, "these will help you sleep. You won't feel any pain at the end." Hyun-woo couldn't take the sedatives. As captain, he needed to stay awake. He needed to be there for his crew until the very end. He returned to the bridge and sat in his chair, watching the distress signal pulse out into the void. 16 hours had passed. No one had answered. He thought about his family back on Talveen Prime, his mate and his 2 children. Would they ever know what happened to him? Or would the Eternal Dawn just be listed as missing, lost somewhere in the great dark between the stars? The air was getting thinner now. Hyun-woo could feel it. Each breath took more effort than the last. Around him, the lights dimmed as the ship's power reserves dropped lower and lower. Soon there would be nothing left but silence and cold. Then suddenly the communication system crackled to life. At first, Hyun-woo thought he was imagining it. Oxygen deprivation could cause hallucinations. But no, there it was again. A voice, clear and strong, speaking in perfect galactic common. "Eternal Dawn, this is the UHNS Indomitable. We have your position. Hang tight. We're coming to get you." Hyun-woo stared at the speakers in shock. UHNS, United Human Nations Ship. Humans, the new species that had joined the Galactic Council only 40 years ago. The species that everyone whispered about with fear and wonder. Humans were strange. They came from a world that seemed designed to kill them, and somehow they survived. They fought wars against each other for thousands of years before they finally reached the stars. When they joined the galaxy, they brought weapons and tactics that shocked the older civilizations. They were good at violence in a way that frightened other species. But they were also known for something else. Stories spread about humans who would help anyone, anywhere, for any reason. Tales of human ships diving into dangerous zones to rescue strangers. Reports of human soldiers who would rather die than leave someone behind. Hyun-woo had always thought those stories were exaggerations. Propaganda, maybe. No species was really like that. No one risked their lives for strangers without wanting something in return. He grabbed the communication controls with trembling hands. "Indomitable, this is Captain Hyun-woo of the Eternal Dawn. We have 12 crew members. Our life support is critical. We have maybe 20 hours left, probably less." "Understood, Captain," the human voice responded. It was calm, professional, with no hint of doubt. "We're pushing our engines hard. We'll be there in 6 hours. Can you hold out that long?" "Yes," Hyun-woo said, though he wasn't sure if it was true. "Yes, we can hold out." "Good, keep your crew calm. We're not going to let you die out here. Indomitable out. The channel went silent. Hyunwoo sat frozen in his chair for a moment, then ran to the common room. His crew looked up at him with hollow eyes, waiting for more bad news. Someone answered, Hyunwoo said. His voice was shaking. A human warship. They're coming for us. 6 hours. The crew stared at him in disbelief. Then slowly, hope began to spread across their faces. It was a fragile hope, the kind that could be easily broken, but it was something. Dae-hyun stood up. I'll try to conserve more power. Maybe we can stretch our air supply a little longer. Boram nodded. I'll prepare the crew for possible transport. Make sure everyone is stable enough to move. Ji-won closed her eyes and whispered a prayer of thanks to the old gods. The next 6 hours were the longest of Hyunwoo's life. He watched the chronometer tick down, counting every minute. He watched the oxygen levels drop lower and lower. His crew was struggling now, breathing hard, moving slowly. But they were still alive, still fighting. Then, exactly 6 hours after the first contact, the sensors picked up a massive energy signature dropping out of faster-than-light travel. The Indomitable had arrived. Through the viewing port, Hyunwoo saw the human warship for the first time. It was huge, much larger than the Eternal Dawn. Its hull was dark gray, covered in armor plating and weapons that Hyunwoo didn't recognize. It moved through space with a grace that seemed impossible for something so big. The communication system came alive again. Eternal Dawn, this is Commander Taemin of the Indomitable. We're here. We're going to get you home. For the first time in 22 hours, Captain Hyunwoo allowed himself to believe that his crew might actually survive. Humans had answered their call, and against all logic, against all reason, he believed they would keep their promise. The Indomitable hung in space like a guardian angel made of steel. Captain Hyunwoo watched through the viewport as a smaller craft detached from the human warship and moved toward the Eternal Dawn. His crew gathered around him, pressed against the windows, their breathing shallow in the thin air. Eternal Dawn, this is Rescue Shuttle Echo 7, a new human voice said through the speakers. We're approaching your starboard airlock. Can you still open it? Dae-hyun rushed to the controls. Yes, we have enough power. Opening airlock now. The young engineer worked quickly, his fingers dancing across the console. There was a hiss of escaping air as the outer door opened. Through the cameras, they watched the human shuttle dock with practiced precision. Metal clanged against metal. Seals locked into place. Docking complete, the human pilot announced. Opening hatches now. Stay calm, folks. We've got you. The inner airlock door slid open and 3 humans stepped through. They wore armor that covered their entire bodies, painted in dark blue with white stripes. The armor made them look bigger than they probably were, more like machines than living beings. Each one carried equipment packs on their backs. But when the lead human removed her helmet, Hyunwoo saw a face that looked kind. She had short black hair and dark eyes that moved quickly, taking in everything around her. She smiled at the Talveen crew. I'm Sergeant Insu, she said. These are Corporals Wanshik and Yunji. We're here to take you somewhere safe. She looked at the Talveen crew and her smile faded slightly. You all look pretty rough. Anyone having trouble breathing? Several crew members raised their hands weakly. The air was so thin now that even standing up was difficult. Sergeant Insu nodded and pulled devices from her pack. These are oxygen masks. Human design, but they'll work for you. Put them on and breathe normally. We're going to move fast, okay? The humans moved through the ship with incredible speed and efficiency. They helped each Talveen crew member put on an oxygen mask. They checked for injuries. They asked quick questions about medical conditions. All 3 humans spoke decent Galactic Common, though their accent was strange to Hyunwoo's ears. Corporal Yoon-ji, the smallest of the 3 humans, knelt beside Boram, who had collapsed from oxygen deprivation. Hey, stay with me, Yoon-ji said gently. She pulled out a scanner and ran it over the Talveen medical officer. Okay, you're going to be fine. Just keep breathing into that mask, nice and slow. Within 15 minutes, all 12 Talveen crew members were wearing oxygen masks and being guided toward the airlock. The humans were patient but firm, never rushing anyone but keeping everyone moving. Sergeant Insu carried old Merchant Tae-sung on her back because he was too weak to walk. The old Talveen weighed almost nothing to her, and she moved as if he was weightless. What about our cargo? Hyunwoo asked as they approached the shuttle. We have medical supplies worth. We'll send a salvage team later, Insu interrupted gently. Right now we're worried about living cargo. You and your crew. Everything else can wait. The human shuttle was cramped with 15 beings inside, but it was warm and had clean air. The moment the airlock sealed, Hyun-woo felt the oxygen levels rise. He took his first full breath in hours and almost cried from relief. The flight back to the Indomitable took only minutes. As they approached the massive warship, Hyun-woo saw just how enormous it really was. The Eternal Dawn could have fit inside its cargo bay 3 times over. Weapons bristled from every surface. Sensor arrays rotated slowly, watching everything. They docked in a bright hangar bay where more humans waited. A man in a white uniform with a medical symbol rushed forward as the shuttle doors opened. "I'm Dr. Young-soo," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "Welcome aboard the Indomitable. Let's get you all to medical and make sure everyone is okay." The medical bay was unlike anything Hyun-woo had seen before. It was clean and white, filled with equipment that hummed quietly. Human medical staff moved between beds, checking on the Talveen crew members. They were gentle and careful, asking permission before touching anyone, explaining everything they were doing. Dr. Young-soo examined Hyun-woo personally, running scanners over his body and looking at screens that showed information the captain didn't understand. "You're dehydrated, and your oxygen levels were dangerously low," Young-soo said. "But you'll be fine. We're going to give you fluids and let you rest. Your whole crew should recover completely in a day or 2. "Thank you," Hyun-woo said. His voice broke on the words. "Thank you for saving us," Young-soo smiled. "That's what we do." He paused and pulled out a data pad. "I need to ask you some questions about Talveen biology. We don't have much information about your species in our medical database. If you help me now, we'll be better prepared to help other Talveen in the future." Hyun-woo spent the next hour answering questions about his people's physiology, diet, and common medical conditions. Young-soo listened carefully and took detailed notes. He seemed genuinely interested, asking follow-up questions and making sure he understood everything correctly. While this was happening, alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed. Hyun-woo felt his heart race with fear. Were they under attack? Young-soo looked up at the ceiling, listening to an announcement that Hyun-woo couldn't quite hear. The doctor's face grew serious. "Stay here," he said to the Talveen crew. "Everything will be fine." But Hyun-woo could hear the tension in his voice. Something was wrong. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Commander Taemin stood watching her tactical displays. She was a small woman by human standards, but she held herself with absolute authority. Her officers moved around her efficiently, each one focused on their tasks. "Commander, we have 3 vessels dropping out of FTL," Tactical Officer Dong-hyun reported. "Kratheen Dominion cruisers." "They're hailing us," Taemin nodded. "Put them through." A harsh voice filled the bridge, speaking through translation software that made it sound mechanical and cold. "Human vessel, you are in Kratheen space. The derelict ship and its crew belong to us by right of salvage. Surrender them immediately." Taemin's expression didn't change. "Negative. The crew of the Eternal Dawn is under our protection. They are not salvage. They are people." "You do not understand," the Kratheen commander said. "We have 3 ships. You have 1. We claim what is ours. Leave now or we will take them by force." Taemin walked closer to the communication console. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but filled with steel. "Let me make something very clear. Those 12 people in my medical bay are under the protection of the United Human Nations. If you want them, you'll have to go through me. And I promise you that's not going to end well for anyone." There was silence on the channel for a moment. "You would start a war over 12 aliens you've never met before?" "If that's what it takes," Taemin replied. "Yes." In the medical bay, Hyun-woo and his crew heard none of this conversation. But they felt the ship change course. They felt the engines power up. And they wondered what the humans were willing to do for a group of strangers they had no reason to care about. The answer, they would soon learn, was anything. Absolutely anything. The medical bay had become very quiet. The Talveen crew could feel the tension in the ship around them. Human crew members moved with purpose through the corridors outside. Voices spoke in urgent tones over intercoms. Something was happening, something dangerous. A young human woman in a dark blue uniform entered the medical bay. She had kind eyes and nervous hands that she kept clasping and unclasping. She looked at the Talveen crew and smiled, though the smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hello," she said in careful Galactic common. "My name is Ensign Kyung-hee. Commander Taemin asked me to stay with you and explain what's happening." "Please don't be scared. What is happening?" Hyun-woo asked. He tried to sit up in his bed but felt dizzy from the medication Young-Soo had given him. Kyung-hee pulled a chair over and sat down. 3 Krathian warships showed up. They're demanding that we hand you over to them. They say you belong to them because your ship was abandoned in their territory. The Talveen crew members looked at each other with horror. The Krathian were known across the galaxy for their cruelty. They didn't see other species as equals. They saw them as property, as things to be used and thrown away. Why don't you just give us to them? Ji-won asked quietly. We are grateful you saved us, but we don't want you to die for us. You don't even know us. Kyung-hee stared at her with genuine confusion. That doesn't matter. You needed help and we gave it. That makes you our responsibility now. Commander Tae-min would never hand you over to anyone who might hurt you. But there are 3 of them and only 1 of you, Dae-hyun said. The mathematics are simple. They will win. Maybe, Kyung-hee admitted. But maybe not. Human ships are different from most others in the galaxy. We're very good at fighting when we need to be. She paused. And we're very stubborn about protecting people we've promised to protect. On the bridge, Commander Tae-min studied the tactical display. The 3 Krathian cruisers had moved into an attack formation around the Indomitable. They were trying to box her in, to limit her options. It was a standard tactic, one she had seen hundreds of times in simulations and real combat. Status report, she said calmly. Dong-hyun worked his console quickly. All weapon systems online. Shields at maximum. Our fighters are ready to launch on your command. The Krathian ships are charging their weapons, but they haven't locked onto us yet. They're trying to scare us, Tae-min said. They think we'll back down if they look threatening enough. Her first officer, Lieutenant Jae-won, stepped closer. He was a tall man with scars on his face from an old battle. Commander, we could jump to FTL. Get out of here before this turns into a shooting war. The Talveen crew is safe. We've completed our mission. Tae-min turned to look at him. And what happens to them after we drop them off? The Krathian will know we rescued them. They'll hunt them down out of spite. Every other species in this sector will know that humans run when threatened. She shook her head. No, we stand our ground. Even if it means war? If necessary, yes. The Krathian commander's voice came through the speakers again. Human vessel, your time is running out. We are losing patience. Surrender the Talveen or face the consequences. Tae-min activated the communication channel. Krathian vessel, I'm going to say this one more time. The answer is no. Not now, not ever. If you want those people, you're going to have to go through me. And I strongly advise against trying. You are alone, the Krathian commander said. We are many. Your bravery is foolishness. Then I guess we're about to find out, Tae-min replied. She cut the channel and turned to her crew. Battle stations. All hands, prepare for combat. Weapons free on my mark. Throughout the ship, humans rushed to their positions. Gun crews loaded weapons. Fighter pilots ran to their craft. Engineers reinforced the power systems. Everyone moved with practiced precision, like parts of a machine that had been designed for exactly this moment. In the medical bay, the Talveen crew could hear the alarm klaxons. They could feel the ship's weapons powering up, a deep vibration that ran through the hull. This is insane, Boram whispered. They're really going to fight for us. Kyung-hee nodded. Of course they are. We have a saying in the human military. No one left behind. It means exactly what it sounds like. Once we took you aboard, you became one of ours. We don't abandon our own. But we're not yours, Hyunwoo protested. We're just strangers you found floating in space. This doesn't make sense. The cost is too high. The cost? Kyung-hee looked at him with those confused eyes again. What cost? What's the cost of doing the right thing? What's the cost of keeping a promise? How do you measure that? She stood up and walked to the viewport. Through the thick glass, they could see the Krathian ships in the distance, dark shapes against the stars. My grandmother fought in the water wars on Earth, Kyung-hee said quietly, before we had FTL travel, before we knew there were other species out here. Millions of people died fighting over drinking water. Can you imagine that? Killing each other over water? She turned back to face the Talveen. We almost destroyed ourselves. We came so close to extinction. But we survived because some people refused to give up. Because some people decided that protecting others was more important than protecting themselves. That's who we are. That's what humans do. Even if it means you die. Ji-won asked. Especially then, Kyung-hee said simply. On the bridge, the tension was thick enough to cut. The Krathian ships were moving closer. Weapons were locked and ready. In 30 seconds, this would become a battle. In 30 seconds, people would start dying. Taemin stood at the center of it all, calm and ready. Her hand hovered over the firing controls. She had fought in 3 major battles before this. She had killed before. She would do it again if she had to. Then Dong-hyun shouted, "Commander!" New contacts dropping out of FTL. Multiple signatures. The tactical display lit up with new markers. 2 more ships, both human. A heavy cruiser and a destroyer. Sister ships to the Indomitable. They appeared on either side of the Crethine formation, perfectly positioned. A gruff voice came through the communication system. "This is Admiral Hajun of the UHNS Defiant. Crethine vessels, you have exactly 10 minutes to leave this sector. After that, we will consider your presence an act of war against the United Human Nations. And trust me, you don't want that." The Crethine commander didn't respond right away. Hyunwoo imagined him on his bridge staring at his tactical displays, doing the same mathematics that everyone else was doing. 3 Crethine cruisers against 3 human warships. Even odds, maybe. But human ships were legendary for their firepower and their tactics. Was it worth the risk? Was it worth starting a war over 12 civilians from a species no one cared about? After 8 minutes of silence, the Crethine ships turned away. Their engines flared bright as they accelerated toward the edge of the sector. Within moments, they jumped to FTL and were gone. The bridge crew of the Indomitable erupted in cheers. Taemin allowed herself a small smile. "Stand down from battle stations," she ordered. Return to normal operations. In the medical bay, the alarm klaxons stopped. The red lights turned off. The deep vibration of charging weapons faded away. Kyung-hee grinned at the Talveen crew. "See, I told you we were stubborn." Hyunwoo lay back in his bed, his mind spinning. The humans had really done it. They had faced down 3 enemy warships rather than surrender a crew of strangers. It defied everything he understood about galactic politics, about survival, about common sense. But maybe, he thought, that was the point. Maybe humans didn't care about common sense when lives were at stake. The journey to the nearest safe port would take 3 days. 3 days aboard a human warship, surrounded by a species that the Talveen crew was beginning to realize they knew nothing about. After the confrontation with the Crethine, Dr. Young-soo cleared the entire Talveen crew for light activity. They were healthy enough to move around the ship, though he insisted they take it easy. The humans had given them quarters near the medical bay, small rooms that were designed for human proportions but comfortable enough. On the first morning, a human appeared at their door. He was short and round, with a friendly face and hands stained with various colors. He wore a white uniform with food spots on it. "Good morning," he said cheerfully. "I'm Chef Sang-woo. I run the galley on this ship. I was wondering if some of you might help me with a problem." Hyunwoo and Dae-hyun followed him to the ship's kitchen, a large space filled with equipment they didn't recognize. The smell of cooking food filled the air, strange scents that made Hyunwoo's nose wrinkle. "Here's my problem," Sang-woo explained. "You're herbivores, right? You don't eat meat, but most of what I know how to cook involves meat or fish. I've been reading about Talveen nutrition all night, but reading isn't the same as knowing. I need your help to make sure I feed you properly." For the next 2 hours, Hyunwoo and Dae-hyun worked with Sang-woo in the kitchen. They explained which vegetables and grains were safe for Talveen to eat. They described the textures and flavors their people preferred. Sang-woo listened carefully, taking notes and asking questions. By lunchtime, he had created a meal specifically for the Talveen crew. It was simple but delicious. Grains and roasted vegetables seasoned with herbs that tasted almost like home. The Talveen crew ate hungrily, their first real meal in days. "This is wonderful," Boram said, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," Sang-woo beamed with pride. "You're welcome. And hey, if you get tired of this, just let me know. I'll try other combinations. Cooking is all about experimentation." That afternoon, Dae-hyun asked if he could see the engine room. He was an engineer, after all, and his curiosity about human technology was overwhelming. A human engineer named Min-ji volunteered to give him a tour. The engine room was enormous, a cathedral of machinery and power. At its heart sat the ship's power core, a hybrid fusion antimatter reactor that produced more energy than anything Dae-hyun had ever seen. "How does it work?" he asked, staring in wonder. Min-ji launched into a detailed explanation, using technical terms that Dae-hyun only half understood. She showed him the fuel systems, the containment fields, the backup generators, She pulled up schematics on data screens and walked him through the entire power distribution network. "This is military technology," Dae-hyun said carefully. "Most species don't share this kind of information." Minji shrugged. "You're an engineer. You appreciate good work. Why wouldn't I show you?" She grinned. "Besides, understanding how something works and actually building it are two different things. I can explain our engines all day, but you'd still need years of research to duplicate them." She wasn't wrong, but Dae-hyun was still surprised. The openness was unusual. Most species guarded their military secrets carefully, but Minji seemed happy to share, even eager to discuss the technical details with someone who understood them. Ji-won spent her time with a human pilot named Jae-won. He was fascinated by her natural ability to sense gravitational fields, something most species had to use instruments for. She was equally fascinated by the human navigation computers, which used artificial intelligence to calculate jump routes in seconds. "Your instincts are incredible," Jae-won said as they stood in the navigation room. "You can feel gravitational wells like I can feel wind on my skin. That's amazing. And your computers are faster than any living mind," Ji-won replied. "Together, our species could navigate routes that neither of us could find alone." They spent hours discussing navigation theory, sharing techniques and ideas. Jae-won taught her about the human mathematical models for FTL travel. Ji-won explained the meditative practices her people used to enhance their natural senses. It was an exchange of knowledge between two very different species, both learning from each other. But it was the small moments that really showed Hyun-woo what humans were like. He saw human crew members playing a game with young merchant Subin, teaching her the rules patiently and laughing when she won. He watched as Dr. Young-soo sat with old Tae-sung for an hour, just talking, keeping the elderly Talveen company because he looked lonely. He observed human engineers helping Boram repair a medical scanner from the Eternal Dawn, working carefully to preserve the Talveen technology, rather than just replacing it with human equipment. Every day, Commander Taemin visited the Talveen crew. She always asked the same questions. Did they need anything? Were they comfortable? Was there any way to make their journey easier? She never seemed rushed or bothered by their presence. She treated them like honored guests, not rescued refugees. On the second evening, Hyun-woo found himself in the observation deck. It was a quiet room with large windows that showed the stars streaming past as the ship traveled through space. He was alone, or so he thought, until he noticed Commander Tae-min standing in the shadows. "I'm sorry," Hyun-woo said. "I didn't mean to intrude." "You're not intruding," Tae-min replied. "This room is for everyone." She walked over to stand beside him at the window. "Beautiful, isn't it? No matter how many times I see it, space still takes my breath away." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the stars. Then Hyun-woo asked the question that had been haunting him since the rescue. "Why did you do it? Why risk a war for us?" Taemin was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. "My grandfather fought in the resource wars on Earth," she said. "Before we reached the stars, before we knew you existed, the wars lasted 40 years. Billions died. Entire cities were destroyed. We poisoned our own planet fighting over oil and water and rare metals." She turned to look at him. "He told me something once, something I've never forgotten. He said, the greatest warriors fight so others don't have to. We're good at war, Captain Hyun-woo. We're very, very good at it. We had to be, because we nearly destroyed ourselves learning how to fight. But we also learned something else," she continued. "We learned that the measure of a civilization isn't its ability to destroy. It's its willingness to protect. Even strangers. Especially strangers." "That makes no logical sense," Hyun-woo said. "From a survival perspective, from an economic perspective, from any rational perspective." Taemin smiled. "Maybe not. But humans aren't always rational. We're emotional. We're stubborn. We believe in things like honor and duty and doing the right thing, even when it costs us." She looked back at the stars. Maybe that's a weakness. Or maybe it's the only thing that makes us worth anything at all. Hyun-woo thought about his own species. The Talveen were practical. They were logical. They made decisions based on careful analysis of costs and benefits. They would never risk 12 lives to save 300, let alone risk a whole ship to save 12. But watching the humans over the past 2 days, he had seen something his people had lost, if they ever had it at all, a willingness to sacrifice for others. A refusal to calculate the value of a life, a stubborn, illogical, beautiful determination to help anyone who needed it, no matter the cost. Your species is strange, Hyunwoo said. I know, Taemin replied. But we're your kind of strange, I hope. Yes, Hyunwoo said quietly. Yes, I think you are. On the third day, Nexus Station appeared on the sensors. It was a massive structure, a hub of trade and diplomacy where hundreds of species met to do business. The Indomitable requested docking clearance and was immediately granted a priority berth. As the Talveen crew prepared to disembark, the human crew lined up to say goodbye. There were handshakes and hugs. Sangwoo gave them recipes he had developed for Talveen food. Minji gave Daehyun a data chip with some non-classified engine schematics. Kyung-hee gave everyone small pins with the symbol of the Indomitable, so they would remember. Dr. Young-soo was last. He shook each person's hand and smiled. Take care of yourselves, and if you ever need medical help, any human ship in the area will help you. We've updated all our databases with what I learned from you. As they walked through the airlock onto the station, Hyunwoo turned back one last time. The human crew waved at them, smiling. They had risked everything for 12 strangers and seemed to think it was the most natural thing in the world. Nexus Station was busy as always, filled with beings from 100 different worlds. The Talveen crew made their way through the crowds toward the transport terminal. They needed to find passage home, back to Talveen Prime where their families waited. But everywhere they went, people stared at them. Whispered conversations stopped when they passed. Other species pointed at them and spoke in hushed tones. Do you think they know? Daehyun whispered to Hyunwoo. About the rescue? How could they? Hyunwoo replied. We just arrived, but they did know. Word had spread impossibly fast. What Hyunwoo didn't realize was that he had recorded the entire incident. His ship's logs had captured everything from the distress signal to the Kratheen standoff, to their rescue. When the Indomitable transmitted the Eternal Dawn's logs to Nexus Station as part of the standard recovery protocol, those logs became public record. Within hours, the footage was everywhere. Every news network, every data stream, every public forum across the galaxy was showing the same images. A human warship facing down 3 Kratheen cruisers, Commander Taemin's voice saying. They are under our protection. The calm refusal to abandon 12 civilians from a species humanity had barely met a reporter for the Galactic News. Network approached Hyunwoo as he tried to buy transport tickets. She was a Vryn, a tall species with purple skin and 4 arms. Captain Hyunwoo, she said, extending a recording device. Can you comment on your rescue by human forces? Is it true they threatened war with the Kratheen Dominion rather than surrender you? Yes, that's true, Hyunwoo said, overwhelmed. They saved our lives. Did they ask for anything in return? Payment, political favors, trade agreements? No, nothing. They just helped us. The reporter's eyes widened. Nothing? The humans wanted nothing? They wanted us to be safe, Hyunwoo said simply. That was all. The interview was broadcast across 40 systems within an hour. By the next day, it had reached most of the known galaxy. The response was unprecedented. Species that had been watching humanity with suspicion suddenly saw them in a different light. Yes, humans were warriors. Yes, they were dangerous, but they were also protectors. They didn't just fight against enemies. They fought for anyone who needed help. Small civilizations that had been bullied by larger powers suddenly had a new option. They didn't have to submit to the Kratheen or the Vorash or the Ishkari. They could ask the humans for help. Within a week, 17 different species formally requested protection agreements with the United Human Nations. They wanted human ships patrolling their space. They wanted the guarantee that if something went wrong, humans would answer their distress calls. The Galactic Council was forced to convene an emergency session. For decades, they had been worried about human expansion, about human militarism, about what humans might do with their advanced weapons and aggressive nature. But this situation was different. Humans weren't conquering anyone. They were protecting the weak from the strong. A senior counselor from the ancient Resh species spoke before the assembly. We have misunderstood the humans, she said, her voice echoing through the chamber. We saw their weapons and assumed they were conquerors. We saw their military strength and assumed they were dangerous, but we forgot to look at their character. She displayed the footage from the Indomitable's encounter with the Kratheen. Look at this. 12 civilians from a minor trading species. No political importance. No economic value, no strategic significance. And yet humans risked war to save them, not because they had to, not because it benefited them, but because it was the right thing to do. The council debated for days. Some species argued that humans were too unpredictable, too willing to fight. Others countered that the galaxy needed someone willing to stand up to bullies and tyrants. In the end, the council passed a resolution acknowledging humanity's right to offer protection to any species that requested it. It was a major shift in galactic politics, and it happened because one human commander refused to abandon 12 strangers. Back on Talveen Prime, Hyunwoo returned to his family. His mate held him for a long time, crying with relief. His children asked him about the humans, about the big warship, about everything that happened. But Hyunwoo couldn't stop thinking about the future. The Talveen had always been peaceful, always avoided conflict. They had survived for thousands of years by staying neutral, by never taking sides, by keeping their heads down. But maybe that wasn't enough anymore. Maybe peace required more than just avoiding war. Maybe it required someone willing to fight for it. 3 months later, Hyunwoo received a message. It was from Earth, from the United Human Nations Diplomatic Corps. They wanted to establish formal relations with the Talveen Confederacy. They were interested in trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense pacts. But more than that, they wanted to learn from each other. The message explained that humans admired Talveen agricultural technology, their peaceful society, their 3,000 years of avoiding major wars. In exchange, they offered to share their knowledge of engineering, medicine, and defense. "We believe our species can help each other," the message read. "You can teach us about peace. We can teach you about protection. Together, we might build something better than either of us could alone." Hyunwoo showed the message to the Talveen High Council. There was much debate. Some counselors worried about getting too close to such a warlike species. Others argued that the humans had proven themselves trustworthy. In the end, Hyunwoo's testimony was what convinced them. He stood before the council and told them everything. About the rescue, about Sangwoo making special food, about Minji sharing engine designs, about Dr. Youngsu's kindness, about Commander Taemin risking her ship and crew for strangers. "They are not what we thought," Hyunwoo said. "Yes, they are warriors. Yes, they are dangerous, but they are also the most compassionate species I have ever met. They believe that protecting others is more important than protecting themselves. The galaxy needs more of that, not less." The council voted to accept the human offer. Within a year, Talveen and human scientists were working side by side. Talveen farmers were teaching humans about sustainable agriculture. Human engineers were helping Talveen ships become faster and safer. But the biggest change was in how the Talveen saw themselves. Inspired by human example, they began training their own defense forces. Not to conquer, not to attack, but to protect. To be able to help others the way humans had helped them. A new ship was commissioned, the first Talveen vessel designed for rescue operations. It was named Indomitable's Hope, in honor of the human ship that saved them. When it launched, Commander Taemin was there as a guest of honor. She stood beside Hyunwoo as they watched the ship lift into space. "You've started something," Taemin said. "Other species are following your example. Building rescue ships, training protection forces. The galaxy is changing. Because of you," Hyunwoo replied. "Because you showed us that strength isn't just about weapons. It's about being willing to use that strength to help others." "No," Taemin said, shaking her head. "Because you were worth saving. Because every life is worth saving. That's something humans learned the hard way, but it's something we'll never forget." Far away in deep space, the UHNS Indomitable continued its patrol. New crew members had joined, but the ship's reputation remained. It was the ship that stood down 3 enemy cruisers rather than abandoned civilians. It was the ship that proved humans meant what they said about protecting the innocent. On the bridge, a new tactical officer named Ji-hoon was training under Dong-hyun. He was nervous, fresh from the academy, worried about making mistakes. "Don't worry so much," Dong-hyun told him. "Just remember why we're here. We're not here to start fights. We're here to protect people who can't protect themselves." An alarm sounded. A distress signal had been detected, coming from a ship in trouble. The species was unknown, the language unfamiliar, but the meaning was clear. Someone needed help. Commander Taemin, still in command after all these months, didn't hesitate. She had never hesitated. She would never hesitate. All hands, battle stations, she ordered. Plot an intercept course. Maximum speed. We have people who need help. The Indomitable turned, its engines flaring bright, and raced toward another distant cry for help. Because that's what humans did. They answered the call. Every time. Without hesitation. Without question. And across the galaxy on 100 different worlds, other species watched and learned. They saw that true strength wasn't about domination. It was about protection. True courage wasn't about attacking the weak. It was about defending them. The humans had shown them a different way. A better way. And slowly, carefully, the galaxy began to change. All because one human warship answered a distress call from 12 strangers they had no reason to care about. All because Commander Taemin believed that every life was worth saving no matter the cost. And in the end, that belief changed everything.